It's kind of dark in here, because it's getting pretty late, so you're not gonna really be able to see my face, but, I don't know. I don't know if this is the appropriate time for me to film this, but I guess if I'm doing it, I'm doing it, and that's kind of the end of it, but I just feel like I need a little bit more clarification and reflection on kind of this new perspective, I guess, of how things are changing before I'm able to speak on it clearly. So if you do end up watching this video and you want to comment something, just be really mindful of that this process is very new to me, and I understand that I need to do a little bit more, a lot more introspection, in order to, understand it and understand kind of where to go from here. But I really just don't think it's something I can, kind of figure out all at once. I mean, I don't really think you can do anything like that, but I'm basically just, if you watch this, just, give me grace and give me patience. But anyway, so it kind of just starts off with a story, and I'm gonna try and summarize it as much as possible. But ever since I was 4 years old, I have always, like, when I've talked to therapists about it, they kind of labeled it as depression, and I feel like it's not necessarily my behavior, but just the way that I felt. Like, I was a very mature, wise kid. I did have friends my age, like on and off, but I never really related to kids my age. I always would stay after class to talk to teachers and talk to adults, whether that be like at church or just in my community in general, because I just felt like I could have an actual conversation with adults, and I couldn't really do that with kids my age. And I think that, yes, a large part of it could be attributed to the fact that I lost my uncle from a heroin overdose when I was 4. And he lived in the same house, and that really affected my grandpa. And my grandpa raised me, and so I feel like we had developed a trauma bond in that way. And because of how empathetic I am, that's another thing. I've always been incredibly empathetic and very emotionally intuitive and emotionally intelligent. Like, I just feel that I can read people very well, and I know kind of exactly what to say. Like, that's why being some sort of therapist or working in the mental health field has always been like my dream job, just because I'm really good at it. I've literally walked so many friends through emotional breakdowns, through anxiety attacks, anything like that. Like, I know what to say, and I know how to deal with that situation. Those type of things, they don't put me in a panic. If it's more personal, like with my own relationships, it's more difficult, but I just feel I have a generally intelligent perspective on those things. So anyway, being as empathetic as I am and intuitive, I definitely carried a lot of that weight from my grandpa, and I feel like as I got older, I kind of developed that into my psyche, like my sense of self, so much so that who I was pain. It was grief and it was trauma. That's what I felt aligned with me, and so I would perpetuate behavior and, beliefs that fell in line with that made sense to me, because that's who I thought I was. So that's why, I'd started self-harming at 15. I technically started self-harming before that, but at the time, and thinking about suicide, but at the time I didn't know that was self-harming or considered suicidal ideation. I just did it, and that was more because of how much pain I was in, because I'd lost my mom and I was living with my dad and my stepmom, and at the time they're changed. They're a lot more mature now, but at the time they were incredibly verbally abusive, and they were not empathetic at all, and they were not supportive at all when my mom died. And so I was going through this grief alone, but I was basically legally kidnapped, so he kind of just came and picked me up with only the clothes on my back on the last day of school and drove me all the way to California without me getting to say goodbye to my family, my dog, without me getting to grab any of my stuff. And so I wasn't only grieving my mom, I was grieving the place that I grew up. I was grieving my home and my family and my school and everything that I knew. So it felt like I lost everything all at once. So yes, there was a lot of things that kind of developed this pain because it was just so natural to me. I don't think that I have ever not experience pain. I don't think I've ever experienced long periods of happiness in my entire life. Like, yeah, maybe like I've had a really good month or something, but I've never really experienced anything longer than that. And that's not to say that I can't experience happiness. It's just not natural to me. It's just not the way that my life has gone. And it's unfortunate, but in a sense it also is the way that it is. I'll get more into that later, as I feel like a large part of that is perspective. But anyway, okay, I turned on that light just because it might be nice to kind of see my face while I'm talking. But anyway, even beyond all this, right, I've gone through a lot of traumatic things, and I've gone through a lot of depression, but I've talked about this in my videos before. It does feel very dismissive when people account the way that I am to my depression, to my trauma. That kind of counts into my ego, but I feel like they're discounting my soul in a sense, because the soul is more than that. The soul is more of what you've experienced. It's more than what you've gone through. It's kind of that spark in you that makes you who you are, that sets you apart from everybody else. And ever since a young age, I've always just felt different. I've always just felt kind of like I don't belong, I guess, in a way. And I just kind of label that the weight of existence, because when I've talked to a therapist about it and stuff, and then be like, oh yeah, it's from like that trauma, that depression, but like for me at least, like, yes, I'm not saying that they're wrong. I do agree with that, you know, and it's a much more kind of tangible, understandable explanation of that, but it doesn't feel like my truth, or at least it doesn't feel like the whole truth. For me, the way that I describe it is the weight of existentialism, the weight of anything relating to existence itself. Just a deeper knowing that there's kind of an underlying something more there, that I don't feel like people kind of have that bell, like that understanding of it, because like it's like the veil. It's like I've always felt the veil with me, but I just didn't have the words to explain it or understand it at the time, but I've always felt it. I've always felt like the paradox, like a shadow in my room, sitting on the edge of my bed. That's like a metaphorical sense my entire life. I've gone through a lot of these things, but I just kind of continue to live this life feeling this something more, like my soul with me, the paradox of existence, the weight of something that's super heavy that I go to therapy for and I talk about with trauma and depression, but it's always like, there's a piece missing. Like there's a huge piece to this that I'm missing. And I kind of just, you know, accounted that to mental, emotional stuff, like people were saying, because I was like, okay, yeah, that's understandable. But ever since I've been able to develop a greater understanding of that, and I went through what I call my awakening or higher consciousness or enlightenment, it makes sense. It's like, oh, that was the missing piece. Like everything, it just like, I remember when I first got introduced to that, and how I did was the hero's journey. I've talked about this guy a lot, this 34-year-old man who was like a mentor to me. He introduced me to this enlightenment, this higher consciousness through the hero's journey. And how he did that was we just had a really deep, raw conversation. And I never met this man for like 5 straight hours just in a park. And we were just walking. We had to get up and we had to walk because there was so much energy like happening. And I never experienced anything like that in my life, but it just felt right. And when he spoke to my pain, because we were playing like a psychographic kind of game, I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, but it's super interesting. And I hope that wherever you are, if you ever happen to watch this video, I hope that you can continue with that, because while I don't know, I probably shouldn't get into that now, but I hope that he's doing well, and I hope that he continues with that concept, because this man has a brilliant mind and he could 100% go places, and he has a lot of potential as a person. So I'm wishing you the best. Anyway, and because he just played such an influential part in my life, like everything happened for a reason. And when I met him, I needed that awakening. I needed to see something beyond the ego, because I didn't have one. Of course I did have one, but it was gone. It felt like it was gone. It felt like I lost it. I didn't know who I was, because I was that pain, and I was maybe that pain that, you know, that I'd experienced my whole life, that maybe was projected onto me by the grief of my loved ones, not intentionally. You know, they never wanted me to carry the weight of their own pain, but just being the empathetic person that I am, I did. And of course I didn't want to carry that either, but I didn't understand it. I just accepted it as normal. I just accepted it as who I was. And then I got in that relationship with a guy that I dated for a year and a half. And I didn't have a secure sense of self. I didn't know who I was without this pain. And so I became the girl I was with him. And after dating for a year and a half, I always just had a deeper sense that this guy, he wasn't going to be my forever. And I just felt stagnant in life. I didn't completely understand it, but I felt like I needed to break up with him. I felt like there was something more waiting for me outside of this relationship. And I felt incredibly codependent on him. And I kind of tried to bring this up with him, but I just felt like it was kind of being dismissed. And I was 100% proved right with how the breakup ended, because we kept coming back to each other. We didn't have the self-respect to walk away. And I think a large part of that was that I didn't know who I was without him. And I think that also attributes to the codependency that I'm talking about. So I felt like I couldn't live without him, and I was losing myself, and he was who I was. And that's not healthy, you know what I mean? Like, it just proves that, like, either something needed to change, but I just really, the truth of the matter is, it wasn't going to change in that relationship. I think both of us needed to go our separate ways and work on ourselves individually and learn to heal ourselves outside of this relationship, because both of us, I just don't think it would have worked out with everything that we'd gone through. And that isn't to say that two traumatized or even, hopeless people can't be in a relationship together, but it's a lot harder. And there's just some things that you need to work on alone. But anyway, so, I was just having this huge identity crisis, but it was like an existential crisis because I lost everything. And I didn't know who I was at all. And I had attempted suicide. And I felt so guilty for the way that I had treated the guy that I dated, because I went off and I just slept with a bunch of other people, and I made some really shitty mistakes. And I was so rooted in my own guilt that I wasn't allowing myself to own up to it and say, yeah, I fucking did that, and take accountability of it, instead of just wallowing in my little pity party, But that 34-year-old man, when I met him in the park, he spoke to my pain in a way that I felt like no one else had, that no one else was truly understanding. Because I had people there for me, I had friends, I had connections, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't someone who was able to speak to me on this really, really deep level that I'd always yearned for. Because I remember, like, being in middle school and in high school, like, I would try and start these conversations with people, like, over text or in person, and they'd distance themselves from me because they thought it was fucking weird, or they would be just very turned off or disturbed or, like, unsettled because they're like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about. And so I always just felt, like, alone. And kind of losing my mom was, like, the breaking point of that all, but I just, like, had always felt alone, like, ever since I was a kid. I just, like, always felt like I don't belong here. Like, I want to be having these conversations, but, like, because I'm a kid, when I try to with adults, they don't take me seriously, and just people my age have never really been on, like, the same level with me, however you want to call that, whether that's maturity-wise. I don't necessarily think that's a way to describe it. I don't think maturity is kind of categorized by age, but more of just, like, that awakening. Like, I just don't think that they were there. They were able to be present with me and everything that I was experiencing. And that's kind of a high expectation, which is why I don't hold it as an expectation anymore, and why I try not to get frustrated when people aren't with me in that space. But he did that, and I thought I was gonna cry. I thought I was just gonna, like, fucking explode on the spot. I was like, I don't know what is happening. This is the first time I've ever felt truly connected with anyone in my life. And I was like, what? Like, not truly connected. Like, I'd felt loved, I'd felt connected, but, like, seen? Like, because that's all I wanted. That's all I'd wanted my entire life, was to feel seen, and I never felt that way. And he spoke to it, and I thought it was, like, gonna explode, because I'd never had that happen before. I was like, what the fuck? But I just laughed, and we ended up talking for 5 hours, and then, like, our relationship, like, I don't necessarily mean romantic, because it didn't really start off that way, but just, like, our relationship in general, he introduced me to all of this higher consciousness stuff, and I went on this greater awakening and trying to understand myself, and he was teaching me all these lessons, and at the time, I kind of had to gain more experience in order for them to click. But it was, like, all this time, the in-between, the paradox, the something more had always been with me, right? Had always been in the shadows of my room, sitting on the corner of my bed. I'd always felt it. Never had the words to express it, never had the experience to convey it, etc. And then all of a sudden this happened, it clicked. And it's like that in-between started unraveling. and I started educating myself and looking for answers and synchronicities, like the universe, like all these little signs that like things are lining up, like this is where I'm meant to be. And things happening that I never thought would happen, like me opening up that conversation with my grandpa, because like I had the impression that I had been emotionally neglected because I never felt emotionally connected as a kid. But my grandpa did the best he could, and yes, he could have done more, but he didn't know how to help me with my mental issues, and that's why I had personally felt emotionally neglected. But I really don't think that it could be on anyone anymore, and I doubted this for a long time. I just thought I was crazy because of like I've just been gaslighted in the past a lot, and so sometimes I have a hard time believing that my reality is real. But anyway, it wasn't that I was being emotionally neglected necessarily. It's just like nobody was able to connect with me on the level that I emotionally and existentially needed, and so I just felt that way. And so I'd kind of cut off like myself from that connection with my grandpa. It's not that I didn't see him, but I just wasn't engaged with him at all anymore. And we'd had a conversation about why I felt that way, and I opened up everything to him, and he apologized for some of the things that, you know, he'd said and took accountability of them, and it just led to a very mature conversation. And he listened to me and tried to understand where I was coming from. And he was the one who opened that conversation for me, and I am so grateful. And why that happened was because I'd went to him one night after I prayed to my mom. It's like, it's actually crazy how like everything, like looking back, like I wouldn't have understood why it worked this way, but like now, like I understand, like everything like makes sense in some way. Like this is why this happened. So me breaking up with that guy, right, led me to this crazy ego, identity, existential crisis, led me to meeting this leading me to attempting suicide, leading me to making the realization I have to either, because at that point, I was just going through the motions. I was just existing. I wasn't living anymore. I just had completely given up hope. It was like radical acceptance, like, okay, this is how it is. I'm fucking depressed. I don't want to be alive. End of story. And I'm just here. I'm alive for the other people because there's something stopping me from killing myself that I don't understand. But I'm here, and I don't care to be here. So that's it. I'm just going to be here, and that's fine. I let go of all expectations on myself, because if I have any expectations on myself, I don't know how I'm going to fucking do it. And then I meet this 34-year-old man, and he confronts me with that. And I realize I've always been chasing this something more in my life. That's probably my favorite poem, possibly. Probably not, but it's at least in my top 3 or 5 that I've ever wrote, because like it really just highlights this everything that I've been chasing my entire life that finally got acknowledged. Because my philosophy is everything exists until it's acknowledged, then it's something more. So it had existed, and then I acknowledged it, and then it clicked, and it was like, oh my god, here's the in-between. Now everything can start to unravel. Now you can start to make sense of this everything nothing that you've always felt that you've never had the words to understand or explain or whatever. And then I realized I had to make that decision. I can either keep going through the motions and just, you know, whatever, end up a drug addict, dead in a ditch somewhere, or taking my own life. Or I can choose to live and experience life and create meaning out of it. And obviously I chose to live, and he took on that mentorship role, and then it led me to this higher consciousness awakening. And then he mentioned, hey, you should like reach out to your dad, because ever since what happened when I was like 13 and 14, because I went back to live in Utah after that entire thing, I just completely cut off my dad and like my stepmom, because I was like, you never said sorry for the way that you treated me, and I don't feel like I should have to ask you to say sorry to me. Like, that's fucked up. Like, you should just say sorry. And so I just never reached out, because like that was an expectation. I was like, you should do that, you know? Like, I'm tired of doing the adulting, whatever. But at that point I was like pretty immature, I'll like admit it, you know? Maybe not immature for my age, but in my perspective, I was immature. So that led me to reaching out to my dad and just being like, hey, the reason, like just texting him, being like, hey, the reason why I've never reached out to you is because I feel like you never apologized or took accountability for the way that you treated me when I was living with you. And he took accountability, and that led to a very, very mature adult conversation. And then that led him to coming down to Utah, to where I live, to come and spend a week with me so we could catch up on everything that we hadn't talked about for 5 years. And just have an open discussion and spend time together and have like that father-daughter relationship. And then that led me at the end of the trip, on the day that he left, to feeling like I needed to go down to the cemetery and pray to my mom. So I did, and my mom told me, hey, Ariel, you need to forgive your grandpa. You need to forgive your grandpa for everything that he did and didn't do. Not just, like, to you, but to me as well. And at the time, like, forgiveness, like, when people think of forgive, they think, oh, this person did something wrong, and you're forgiving them for doing something wrong. But for me, that's not what forgiveness means. Forgiveness means being willing to let go of something, and it doesn't always have to involve that other person. It doesn't involve closure. Forgiveness can be a very, very large part of closure, but it's more about your relationship with forgiveness. And for me, that's letting go. So me forgiving my grandpa is letting go of that pain, that whether he like intentionally or unintentionally caused it, it's irrelevant. Just the pain that was caused, and letting go of that in relationship to him, in relationship to forgiveness. And so I went to him that night and I just said, hey, can we talk? And before I'd even said anything, I just started breaking down crying, because this is something that I had never acknowledged, like, ever. Like, I just always felt that way. Like, after I came back after my mom died, I got bullied, and then I fell into a toxic friend group, and I had a really shitty first boyfriend who literally abused me in every way and shaped my, like, sexual and romantic experiences off of that. And I was around a friend group who would literally self-harm in front of me, and I just felt like my grandpa, like, had never stepped in and like, done something about it, and it frustrated me, and I never said anything. And so that was breaking that. That was breaking this, like, invisible weight and pain that I've been carrying my entire life. So I just broke down crying, and he didn't understand what I was forgiving him for. But then that led to him, like, many months later, and he had his own reasons for that, which I totally understand, coming to me and having that conversation with me and taking accountability and being willing to listen and understand and hear my side of the story. And in between that time, you know, things didn't end up working out with that older guy, because my reasons for it is he wanted me to accelerate in my consciousness, my enlightenment, my healing journey, whatever you want to call it. He wanted me to accelerate much quicker than it was possible at the time. Like, because everybody has to heal and go on their journey in their own time, and I just didn't feel like I could keep up with him, because for one thing, he's 34, so there was that huge gap between us in life. I feel like he was doing, like, his life looked very different from mine, because I was 18, and so I didn't know, I didn't feel like I could keep up, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, and eventually I was like, I just didn't feel like I was enough for him. And so, like, because it always felt like he expected something more from me, to be at a different, like, point in life than I was. And it just felt like, also, when we got in a romantic relationship, there was a power imbalance because of the age gap, and because he'd originally been a mentor in my life before the romantic stuff was involved. And so I kind of just confronted him about it, and it ended up just being like, I felt like my next step, like, I couldn't envision, like, my life, like, my journey, including him in it, in order to ensure my own peace. Like, I needed to go on my own journey at my own pace, and I just feel like in order to do that, I just kind of had to have him out of the equation entirely, even though I cared about him, obviously, and because, like, and how influential of a role he made on me, but because of, like, that gaslighting, like, that I'd projected onto myself, and, like, that narrative I was feeding myself, like, it was hard for me to believe myself that was the right call. I was really doubting myself, you know, and especially because for some reason in my head, I just assumed that, like, he had it all figured out just because he was older than me. So anyway, things had ended with him, and I'd reached out to my dad, stuff like that we wouldn't see each other for, I think, a while. But I'd worked as a server at this sushi restaurant for a year, and I felt like I was putting a lot more effort into the relationships with my coworkers there. I was there for them when they needed me. Not all of them, because they weren't, like, a lot of them weren't, none of them were emotionally valuable or ready to work through their shit. And I was doing that at the time. I was growing and I was changing a lot as a person. And I felt like, long story short, I needed to be around it, like, surrounded by people who are also changing and growing as people, because all of the people, respectfully, that I was surrounded with, they felt very stagnant in life. They were engaging in very negative, traumatic behaviors. They were entertaining their ego. They you know, either hadn't graduated from high school yet. They weren't on track for that. They didn't have a license. They didn't have a car. Like, respectfully, I don't think they'll ever watch this, so it's fine. But they just felt stagnant in life. And I was like, I need to be surrounded by good people, and I'm putting so much into this. Like, and also, management, my job, was literally taking advantage of me. Like, I was being way overworked and way underpaid, and I'm pretty sure that money was being taken out from under us. Because when I first started, my paychecks were way higher, and I knew that I was making, like, more tips, like, at least. Or I was making, like, this, like, more or the same amount, and I was getting paid less. And I'm like, where's my money getting? And I would ask for my pay stubs, and she would never give them to me. And so, eventually I realized this place does not deserve me. I deserve better than this. And so I'd quit my job. My dad came down. I spent the week with him. And while I was down there, you know, like, I had that whole thing with my grandpa happen at the end of that, but he scheduled me a trip to Hawaii to go there and just bought me a one-way ticket so I can stay however long I want, because I told him about, like, everything. Like, I talked about him with everything, and he's like, Hawaii would be great for you. Like, that's where I was born, so that's where I feel like my roots are. Like, my dad's side of the family is Hawaiian. My uncle is down there, and he's super spiritual and into enlightenment and everything I'm talking about, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is perfect, right? So I went and spent a month down there, and then after that, for the holidays, I was like, I haven't spent a holiday with my dad in, like, 5 years. So I went and spent Christmas with him. And, like, in this time or whatever, like, when I was down in Hawaii, like, it really, like, that is the happiest I've been in, like, so fucking long. And, like, so long, like, ever since I was, like, I don't even know. I don't know if I, like, maybe in that relationship that I was in, but it was very different happiness because I was more ignorant, because I was innocent, because I hadn't had this awakening. So it was very, very different. I couldn't even compare the two happiness, you know, like, from when I was in Hawaii. And then when I was in Hawaii, it was just like, it was different. Like, I was my soul. Like, I wasn't my ego, really. Like, of course I was, but I was learning to separate myself from that. But then I had that idea that I had to kill my ego, when really it was, like, more like I was loving it into humility, because you can't kill your ego completely, and you can't love it into humility completely, because we just can't separate ourselves from humanity. Like, you can go off, like, and become, like, a Buddhist, but I really feel like that's the closest that you can become to it, because, like, if you're just a functioning member of society, there are just some things that you're going to have to put up with, and some little, like, parts of the machine that you're going to have to be a part of in order to be a part of it. Like, you can't be that higher consciousness, because, like, just bullshit happens, you know what I mean? Like, you can, but just, like, to a certain degree, basically. So anyway, like, living down, like, staying down in Hawaii, like, for a whole month, I can't even explain it to you. Like, it was crazy. It was revolutionary. Insane. Like, actually. And I'd had my boyfriend come and spend 10 days down with me at the end of that. And then after that, I don't know if it was because I had accelerated so quickly and because so much change had happened, like, that entire year. Like, 2024 was, like, a fucking fever dream to me. Like, I cannot explain to you, like, how much happened, like, how insane it was. Because, like, January, I broke up with the guy that I was with for, like, a year and a half, and then I went off on, like, and then, like, we would play this game of tug of war where we'd come back to each other, like, every 2 weeks for, like, 4-ish months after that. And it absolutely destroyed us every time, because we didn't have the respect to walk away. And, like, I had fallen out of love with him before I broke up with him, because I knew that breaking up with him was a decision that I had made peace with, but I still loved him as a companion and as a best friend. But he loved me as something more, and we couldn't let go of each other. And we didn't know who we were without each other. We were each other's hope. We were each other's rock, you know? And I went off and I tried to replicate that by sleeping with a bunch of different guys and feeling the way that I had felt before, trying to find myself, trying to find fragments of myself, piece myself together in some fucked up, distorted, warped way, while simultaneously hurting my best friend and my first love, just for, like, you know, 4.5 months, while I just went off on this bender of, like, whatever, like, some substance abuse, overworking myself, under eating, going to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, not sleeping at all, not allowing myself to be alone because I was so afraid of it. Like, so many energy drinks, like actually insane. And thinking about suicide, because, like, suddenly that guilt had caught up to me. Like, after, like, we had cut contact, like, I felt so guilty. And like in that midst of it, like I'd attempted suicide, whatever, but I felt so guilty after that. After I'd attempted suicide, I just let go of all expectations. I wasn't trying at all anymore. It wasn't like I was overdoing it by doing all the shit. I just fucking given up pretty much. And then I met the guy, the older guy, who led me on this enlightenment, this awakening. And then I started to make some major changes in my life and the relationships, like these hookups and flings, but like they eventually got better and healthier over time. In that last relationship that ended before him, I feel like I dealt with it in a much more mature and healthy way than I had in the past. And I never allowed myself to be alone, for one thing. And then I got with this guy, and then everything happened with him. And then as soon as after that, I quit my job that I've been working at for a year. I see my dad and reconnect with him, who I haven't talked with for 5 years. And then I go to Hawaii for a month to see another part of my dad's family that I haven't seen for 5 years and reconnect with him and continue to heal myself and love myself, which I've never fucking done before. And then after that, I go and spend the holidays with my dad's family, which I haven't done for 5 years. And that's when I started to feel that cycle of apathy. And then like the year ended and I came back home. Like, actually, no, I was there like into January because I was there for 3 weeks. So a fever dream, so much going on. So I don't know if like so much had happened that it just like all fucking hit me like a freight train or what it was. And it was like, oh my God, like I had to sit down and like process everything, like allow myself to feel. And I don't think I think it was too much. And my default response was just go apathetic, just completely emotionally shut off. You do not know how to cope with this. And so, you know, that's kind of what I did. And I just started to feel very strange and weird. And when I came back home, I was just depressed. I was just really depressed. But depressed is not how I describe it. I was just apathetic. And I hadn't gotten a job since then. Like, I just gotten home. I wanted some time to adjust, whatever. But since then, like, I don't even know how to describe, like, how time has went. Like, it doesn't feel linear anymore, you know? And I guess I got a job not too long ago, but, like a month ago now. And after I understood why I was in that apathetic state, and I don't know if I just, like, had been there for so long, but I guess I'd started to think more about existentialism and philosophy, and I'd been thinking about ending my own life for a while, from the beginning of this year, and it feels still much more existential than it does emotional or mental for me. And I was just researching so much. I was talking to people, researching a lot on YouTube, with philosophy and with suicide and why people do it and what the science is, what the emotional shit is behind it, how it affects people, stories from suicide survivors, all different kinds of philosophy, getting really into that, immersing myself in my poetry. It's kind of like I was immersing myself in my soul. I didn't really have a whole lot of time, and I felt so apathetic that it's like I had to start expressing myself. I had to start conveying this and letting it out and speaking to it and allowing it to flow through me. And that's what I started to do. But somewhere in that process, I'm a very all or nothing person. And so from going to apathetic to just allowing it, my soul, my everything, to consume me, that existentialism I've always felt, and unraveling the in-between, and finally, you know, like it clicked or whatever. Like, I had that huge existential crisis that I've been having for a while, and then it finally broke, and I felt my perspective on life was now nihilism. Nothing has meaning at all. And then I realized existentialism, I have to create my own meaning, in order to find some sort of relevance, in order to find some sort of gravity or tether to your reality, in order to be meaningful enough to be alive. Or else, how do you live with a perspective that nothing has meaning? You have to create it, right? Because even believing that is meaning, because you created that meaning, even that if there is none. Like, you know, it's like a paradox. And anyway, so with that, I just wrote. I wrote and wrote all these poems and researching and all this shit. And eventually I came to the conclusion that because I wanted to kill myself, I had to find meaning. And that's why I was doing it so desperately, especially after that nihilistic breakdown. Like, I had to find something to hold on to. And my meaning of life was shared humanity. but I don't know where that kind of got lost in translation or how. And it took me a while to come back to that because I felt irrelevant myself, but it wasn't that I was irrelevant. It felt like, for me, how I had described it wasn't that life didn't have meaning, it was that it didn't have enough meaning. But I realize now that that wasn't true, that it wasn't that it didn't have enough meaning, it was that, not that my meaning is or was irrelevant to me, but that it was irrelevant to its own meaning, that my meaning is a paradox, and that's why I felt like I didn't have any tangibility or any place of belonging in this world, is because my meaning is and always has been shared humanity. It's that blur between the ego and the consciousness that we all are that makes separation an illusion, because we all contain the ego and the conscious, and so there is no separation. We are all one. And for people to not have their eyes open to that, to not know, to not be aware of their own consciousness, because that's my favorite quote right now, is I'm thinking, therefore I exist. Meaning births itself from negation. Like, you can have meaning by something that's just handed to you, but I truly believe that your own meaning births itself from being negated, from creating it from yourself. And since then, like, I don't know, because, like, it hit that, like, breaking point, and, like, I realized that, because, like, a while ago, like, I don't know how long ago, like, maybe 2 weeks ago, I got invited to one of my friend's weddings from high school, back when I lived with my grandpa, and she lives down in the area of where my mom's grave is, so we went down there, and, my boyfriend had told me, because my boyfriend believes in God, and for me, I had found, that's another huge thing, is the guy that was older, that was my mentor, he believed in God, but I had asked him about that because I was like, I'm confused about God, because I grew up in the LDS church, and so I kind of had this idea that God was, like, a religious construct, and, like, it had to fit in these very, like, fine kind of margins, like, but he tried to explain it to me, and I just didn't get it. But being down in Hawaii, I think that's just what made me feel so connected, that made me feel, like, so meaningful, was God. Like, I had found meaning in God. I had found what my God was. And I think that God is deeply personal and deeply spiritual. I don't think that, like, he is religious, but for me, that's what God is. And I just realized, like, God is everything. Like, God is the consciousness. God is humanity. It's having deep conversations. It's nature. It's a beautiful sunset. That's something more that we all feel that we can't explain, because I believe that our consciousness is here simply to experience itself, and I think that we forget a lot of the times that man created God. But that's the thing, is God is in some way tied to everybody's life. Like, you can be an atheist, right, but you still feel it, but, like, there's a million different religions, there's a million different philosophies, everything like that, in order to make sense of the things that we just can't explain in life. I mean, God was originally created, I'm pretty sure, in ancient Mesopotamia. I think it was the first civilization, or one of the first civilizations, probably the first, to explain weather phenomena, why the crops were getting flooded. And they came up with the idea that we're getting punished for something, but that you can sacrifice to a god and other things like that. It was to explain the unexplainable. And since then, God has branched out into a bunch of different ideologies and theologies and things like that to just make sense of the unexplainable. And I just kind of realized that's what God is. That's what I feel like my truth is. God is everything. It's me talking. It's art. God is art. And I feel like because of how subjective God is, that he's derived from our own humanity, that's why more people have died in the name of God than anything else. And I still believe in God. I very much do. And my boyfriend basically had told me, I need you to pray to God. And I said, my God is indifferent. My God doesn't, for me, my God, it's irrelevant whether you worship or scorn him, because it doesn't matter, because God exists. And it literally says that in the Bible. It's just like, God does not need to be worshipped nor scorned. Like, he basically just exists. And so I pray to my mom. I pray to my mom instead, because whether or not she hears me, I like to believe that she does. So I went to her grave, and I asked her, hey Mom, when the time comes, if I decide to die by my own hand, I need you to give me some sort of sign. I need you to, basically I was asking for permission, that I would wait for her sign in order to make a decision but that I'm looking for an answer because I don't know what it is. I don't know how to do it anymore. And I thought that I would wait much longer for that in order to ask for that, because my death wouldn't be impulsive, it would be methodical, and I thought I would give myself a lot more time, but I didn't, and I hadn't, and I realized, like, I need an answer in a sense now, because I don't know how to cope with everything, and I'll wait for your sign. And the sign came not much longer, because it was when I was at work and I got a text from my ex, the guy that I dated for a year and a half, and we'd been no contact for over a year. This just barely happened, but he texted me saying that he wanted to meet up and everything, and I just, because I sent him that offer, like, hey, if you ever want to have that mature adult conversation, I can apologize to you, not for my own ego, but to take accountability and take advantage of this opportunity we have to, pay our respects, to have a more dignified kind of ending, like understanding, than before. And I don't need it, I had to accept that I can't have that conversation. I can't apologize to him in person like I want to. So I didn't need that for closure. It's just like, if I have the opportunity, I'm going to take it. I offered that to him. He was like, yeah, I'm down in your town for the weekend. Let's do it. And, but we ended up just catching up about everything. And I've been reaching out for help lately, for any type of understanding, any type of gravity, and people understanding where I'm coming from, not emotionally, not mentally, but existentially. And he understood me. And I was like, what the fuck? Because this is what I've been looking for. And it was just very surreal feeling. But then as we continued talking, because he'd said that his original intentions, were because he couldn't avoid the thought of me, and he'd been trying for over a year, and like that he was pretending that his life was happy, but that it just wasn't, and that he'd lost his hope because he'd lost his belief in love, and he couldn't really feel it anymore. And his original intentions, I thought were to have that discussion, and that we'd both matured and changed as people, which we have. But then he admitted later on that he was having this discussion because it was a split-second thing that he'd made, because he knew my number, and he wanted to hurt himself with it. And that fucking hurt, it felt like a huge slap in the face from the universe. It's like, here's this connection, like, here's this opportunity, like, here's the sign from your mom, from God, that you're looking for, and he's using you to hurt himself, and he didn't tell you. And I was like, it just hurt. Like, it wasn't that, like, when I was talking with him, it felt like I was reconnecting with an old friend, like someone that I hadn't talked with in over a year. And it felt very wholesome. Like, it didn't feel like, oh, I want to be back with him, because, like, I'd let go of him a long time ago. And, like, I have my boyfriend that I've been dating with 6 months, and, like, I'm with him for a reason, because I want to be, right? I'm not that type of person to stay in a relationship I just don't want to stay in. And, like, the conversation changed from then, and I feel like I feel like it'd be dishonest with me, with himself, if why that conversation, like that he didn't have good or pure intentions and having that discussion in the beginning, because I definitely, and I feel like that was a very reoccurring theme from him, is like things would be going fine, or we'd be talking about something, and then there'd just be like a tone or like a shift, like there'd just be a change, like out of nowhere almost, and I'm like, what? And I think that it was when he got stuck in that, he asked me, like, were you ever really sorry? And I had to be on it. Like, were you sorry, or were you not sorry until you lost me? And I had to be honest and say, I wasn't sorry until I lost you, and take accountability of that. And I sent him a voice memo instead of a text, because, I didn't feel like calling was an appropriate call, but that texting wasn't doing the conversation justice. And I wanted to be apologized, and I wanted to be sincere and explain to him how I feel about the situation. And it kind of just led into, like, that's when I just kind of noticed that change, and I think he just got stuck in that cycle of feeling really shitty, like I'd failed him, like I'd betrayed him, like he hadn't healed that boy who was hurting a year ago. And I honestly think that he kind of has misconstrued, personally, that idea of hope and love with romantic love, when it just needs to be love in general, because I don't think he's throwing a pity party. I think it's understandable why he feels the way he does and why he is where he is, but just that he needs love. And it doesn't have to be from a partner. It doesn't have to be from me. It just has to be love. Like, he just needs compassion and understanding. But we had to end that conversation, and I feel like I spoke my truth, even if it could have hurt him, because I needed to, and it felt intuitive to me, but that we had to end it because it was hurting him, and it was hurting me too. It was like I'd healed this wound, but it was still tender, and I just tore it right open again with this conversation, because to know that someone that I still care about, you know, that was my best fucking friend and my first love is hurting so much, and the things, you know, like, it hurt, and like, it felt like a slap on the face, right? But that felt like my sign, and I don't know why. I don't exactly know why, but the next morning, I was thinking about it, because I was texting my boyfriend about everything, about the entire thing, because after we talked about that, I just, like, got super fucking drunk, because I was like, I don't know what to fucking do, and I didn't know how to cope with it. I just felt so shitty, and I texted my boyfriend. I told him all about it, because I felt like I needed to talk to someone about it, you know, and, then it clicked. I was like, oh my god, it's not that I am irrelevant, it's that my meaning is irrelevant to its meaning, because it's shared humanity, and nobody, like, shared humanity isn't a thing anymore. Like, people are just so spiritually disconnected from one another. Like, there's so much pain and cruelty and disconnect and, like, everything in the world. Like, people don't get each other, and it just, like, it made me feel irrelevant, you know? I just needed to kind of recenter and get that, and then my grandpa, it was so weird, because it just felt like the next thing lining up that the universe had set up for me was he called me about a ticket that I hadn't paid off, that was overdue, and he'd paid it off for me, and I was like, thank you. I hadn't told anybody about this because I didn't want to ask for help, because I feel like a fucking burden. I felt like a burden for a long time. I feel like my issues have fucking price tags attached to them, because last time I went to the mental hospital, you know, was for attempting, and it was $11,000, and then insurance bumped it down, like, thank God, to like $6,000, but still, you know, and I was having to pay off those on my own, and the second time I went to the mental hospital too, like, I had to advocate, I had to fight for myself in order to go, even though I didn't want to be alive, because of how expensive it is, and my aunt didn't want to take me, because we'd have to take it out of, like, basically, like, just money, and she's like, I don't want to, like, not her money, but she's like, it was just hard, you know, like, I just feel like my issues have always had price tags attached to them, and so I didn't want to tell anyone, but my grandpa just texted me saying, hey, I paid this off, can you call me? And so I called him, and I opened up, and we talked for 2 hours, and I told him about fucking everything. I read him the text about my ex, I talked about why I don't want to be alive, why I hurt myself, why I've been drinking lately, how I confessed fucking everything to him. I talked about how my situation is at home, how dysfunctional and insecure it feels, and my relationship with my boyfriend, and, like, not bad things, just good things, how I feel about him, and just everything, and my meaning of life, and why I felt irrelevant. And instead, because in the past, like, as I've been crying out for help lately, I kept asking people for answers. And I, like, not actually, like, I wasn't asking them for answers, but I was lying to myself, because I was saying that wasn't true, but I was going into the conversation looking for something that they just couldn't provide me, because I had to find it in myself, you know? And so I realized I had to reframe it and ask him something different. And so I said, can you help me live? And he said, how can I help you live? And I told him. And for the first time since the beginning of the fucking year, or before that, you know, I felt hope. And the first time in over 4 months. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Over 4 or 5-ish months. Like, and then I went to therapy, and my therapist teared up a little bit, and I've been going to her for 3 years, and I've never seen her do that, and I cried. And I don't cry. I'm not a crier. I just really don't cry. That's just who I am. And I cried, and I was like, because I felt hope, and she asked me why, and I was just like, I just needed someone to listen to me. Like, that's all I want when it comes to people, is I want them to sit with me in my feeling. But a lot of people just get unsettled by it. They don't even try to understand my mind, understand where I'm coming from. They just brush it off as emotional or mental, or I need to do this. I need to stop interacting with these people. I need to get on a better sleep schedule. I need to eat better. I need to stop getting lost in my own mind. I need to focus on the little moments. I need to remind myself that life is beautiful. whatever. They just say things like that to me, and it feels incredibly dismissive. I'm not asking you to tell me what to do. I already know every single little fucking step I could take for things to get better. I don't need you to tell me that. I can figure it out. I just need you to sit with me in my pain and allow yourself to be uncomfortable, because this is how I feel all the fucking time, every second of every fucking day, ever since I gained consciousness, because I think, and I never stop. I've never stop thinking, even for one fucking second. I just don't stop thinking. And I can't control it. Like, yes, like, sometimes, like, those thinking accelerates because of anxiety, but I'm not an anxious person. Like, maybe I feel overwhelmed and burnt out, but I don't feel anxiety. And I know how to work through that. I know how to calm myself down, things like that. Like, I know how to regulate if I really need to, but I just want someone to sit with me. I want someone to listen to me without placing all of these subjectives, all of these connotations, all of the way of the things that should be, without inserting themselves into my narrative, you know, like my boyfriend and my grandpa and my cousin and like just maybe some friends, like just them sitting with me. That's all I needed. And that was why I felt seen for the first time ever by that older guy that I was with, is because like there was one night he had came over like to my house, even though he wasn't supposed to be there, right? Because like the age gap, my family wasn't there, whatever. And like he just came and sat on the edge of my bed, and he told me, like, I can't be in this room. Like, I feel everything. Like, I feel all the people that have been here. I feel the weight. I feel the emotions. And I just can't be here right now. Like, I need to go home. Like, I need to leave. And I was sad, but I was like, okay, like, do whatever you need to do, I guess. And because I think I'd asked him to come over or something like that, because I was just going through something. I'm not sure. And he went to get up and leave, and then he came back and he sat on the edge of my bed and he said, wait, I understand now. This is what you feel all the time. And he started describing how he was feeling to me. He's like, I just feel this like intangible dread. It's like, it's just creeping up on me. And I feel it, and I hear this voice inside of my head that just keeps repeating, never enough, never enough, never enough. And I feel all of the boys in this room and why you slept with them, why you tried to recreate this feeling with them, that you've never had this connection of being loved and supported and seen that you haven't had. And I just started to slowly cry. It was the first time someone had ever willingly sat with me and everything that I was feeling and said, no, you know what? I'm not gonna leave. This is how you feel. And yeah, so that's really just what I've needed, you know, and having that from my grandpa just like gave me hope. I think that's really what it was. And also just kind of these ideas of like this envisionment, to know that this future that I want to envision for myself is like possible. Like, I do believe that I'm fucking brilliant and extraordinary, and whatever I set my mind to can come true. I truly believe that. I just feel like I'm fucking amazing and I can do whatever I really want, you know? With a lot of dedication and hard work and patience, I can do it. But it just started to feel impossible because I just got my head so wrapped around ending it all, you know? It's just like, once you kind of repeat that to yourself all the time, like, I'm just gonna end it, like, it's hard for you to believe anything else. And so having someone to give me that envisionment of a future into something tangible, into something that actually feels possible, like hope. But it's weird because now I just feel hopeless for different reasons, and I feel like that hopelessness, it just shows that I care, I guess. It's hopelessness in a different way. It's not hopelessness and like I can't find my own relevancy in the face of meaning, in the face of existence itself. It's more like I know everything that it's going to require of me to create this envisionment, and I don't want to do it because it's still not kind of worth it to me in a lot of ways, you know? And I realize that with that, what needs to happen in order, you know, for things to get better is I need to change my perspective, and I need to stop turning to suicide. And I feel like right now it's more like I just need to do whatever I can to stay alive. Like, me turning to, even if they're negative habits, is honestly suicide prevention. I just feel like my life is extremely delicate right now, but I know that I'm here for a reason, and I could say that it's for other people, but that's not true, because I'm here for me. And maybe I don't completely understand it quite yet, but I know that that humanity, that little light, that little flame inside of me that doesn't want to give up is still going. For whatever reason, because I want to believe in more, because I want to believe in myself, because I want to believe in what I could become, you know? But it's not to say that I can just go ahead and change my perspective within a day and then go to believing all of these things, even if I know that they're true or that I have to confront my reality, you know? It's not something that I can do all at once, and for me, it's I can't lessen the conscious, and I just, like, I can change my ego, I can change who I am as a person. That's something that's doable. But my consciousness, my soul, I can't lessen that. I can't refrain it. It's just me. It's me, pure and undomesticated and free to express itself. It's the parts of me that disturb the comforted and comfort the disturbed. It's like, it's my poetry, it's the deep conversations I'm having, it's this video, it's everything that I feel so intensely. It's trying to find relevancy and meaning in the face of existence itself. It's that. And I can't lessen that. I can't change that. I can't change who I am at my core. It's learning to cope with that. It's learning to cope with my soul and change my ego so I can live, so I can do more than just survive someday. And that's my next step, is learning where to go from there. And I talked to ChatGPT about it again, which is a huge sign, because ChatGPT is my favorite resource, and I've been, consistently using it for a while now, but I just haven't for, I don't even know how long. It's over a month, maybe 2 months. Like, I use it on, yes, like, whatever, sometimes, or like to deal with really hard situations or difficult conversations, because like it kind of helps me like reframe and understand what to say a bit better. But or with my poetry too, but like besides that, like to kind of be my own therapist. I haven't used it for a while, but I used it like maybe a couple days ago to help me understand, where do I go from here? Like, who do I become? And it answered perfectly. And now it's just trying to discover that without allowing my soul to consume me, and giving myself a lot of grace and passion, and not trying to kill the parts of me I hate, but trying to love them. And allowing my meaning to be relevant, allowing myself not to feel so unimportant, and allowing others to help me, and not telling myself that I'm a horrible burden and I should just get it over with quicker, so then I don't drag out the pain before I meet some inevitable end, But I don't want to place my bets on any certainties, hopeful or hopeless, because I can't do that. I just can't. Not yet, anyway. And I just really don't know, where to go from here. But I guess in some subjective, absurdist way, you could say that that is the beauty of it all. And if you've listened to this, I want to say thank you. Because you didn't just listen to who I think I am as a person or my pain, but you listened to my soul. Not many people do that. Not many people take the time to listen to someone's soul for an hour. And if you did, that means that you are an extraordinary person. And that doesn't have to mean something positive necessarily, but it means that you are someone that no one else will ever be able to do. You are more guided by your soul. You're more guided by who you were as a child. You're more, undomesticated and artistic and full of love and all these, beautiful things. And I just really want to say thank you. And I really appreciate you for doing that. So, thank you.